Theoretical threats are officially a thing of the past. All right, let's just get right into it. In this explainer, we're diving into 4 global dangers that have suddenly crashed straight into our immediate operational reality. We're pulling directly from executive assessments that show a really dramatic shift in both the geopolitical and technological landscape. So we aren't just talking about long-term predictions anymore, we're talking about active shifts that demand actionable responses from you today. Now, there is a core truth driving our urgency here, and it's that governance windows are narrowing much faster than most institutions can actually react. Basically, the future is already here, and time has run out on simply preparing for it. The main insight we'll be exploring across these different domains is that traditional policy is just failing to keep up. So the immediate implication isn't about, predicting the future better. It's about building faster feedback loops and moving way earlier on standards. We have to stop treating cyber, industrial policy, and war finance as completely separate issues. To digest these massive global shifts without feeling totally overwhelmed, here's our roadmap. First, operational quantum risk. Second, contesting agentic AI standards. Third, geoeconomic choke points. Fourth, Russia's post-war trajectory. And finally, a concrete living action plan. Let's move right into our first domain, quantum risk, which has rapidly transitioned from a theoretical whiteboard concept to an urgent reality. The clock is ticking loudly across multiple strategic fronts right now. Treaties we've historically relied on are expiring. Take the New START Treaty, for example, which leaves the US and Russia without bilateral nuclear limits in early 2026. And looking a bit further out to 2030, we see projected windows for over 1,000 PRC warheads alongside highly debated quantum breakthroughs. But here's the most urgent part. Actionable post-quantum cryptography standards were already finalized by NIST back in August 2024. So this isn't just about waiting for a 2030 milestone where quantum computers might break encryption. It's about the fact that the governance and standards windows are closing right now. There's this massive misconception that we're on a rigid countdown clock to 2030. The reality? Organizations have to stop waiting for some mythical tech breakthrough and immediately start migrating high-value data to new cryptographic standards. The danger of store now, decrypt later is incredibly real today. In plain terms, adversaries are vacuuming up your encrypted data right now, just waiting for the future computing power to unlock it. Quantum migration is no longer an R&D problem. It is an active, day-to-day procurement and systems engineering challenge. Sitting on the sidelines literally just increases your exposure. Moving on from cryptography, our second domain looks at the battle to define protocols for agentic AI. This isn't speculative side chatter anymore. It's a highly organized strategic control point. The source material confirms that at a recent Internet Engineering Task Force meeting, specifically IETF 125 in Shenzhen in March 2026, establishing the actual rules for how AI agents authenticate and operate became a primary battleground. We saw presentations covering agent identity, session management, and cross-domain interoperability. So what does that mean in plain English? It's about who gets to verify that an AI is actually who it says it is, and exactly what digital assets it's allowed to touch. The rules of the road for next-gen AI are being written in real time. Now, let's be totally objective on the intelligence here. There is a persistent myth that Chinese actors achieved total security exclusion in these standards. But the reality is that Western security work, things like look-load identity and OAuth discussions, does absolutely exist. The real problem? It's dangerously dispersed across different venues and draft families. And in the world of standards politics, fragmentation can cause you to lose just as decisively as outright exclusion. The immediate task for institutions is to show up with integrated security language and actual implementable text. Let's transition to our third domain and examine how great power competition is shifting away from raw GDP comparisons toward physical, operational bottlenecks. We hear constant media chatter about an imminent BRICS common currency completely taking over, but the data tells a very different story. The US dollar still overwhelmingly dominated official foreign exchange reserves at 56.77% at the end of 2025. Sure, there's definitely a push for faster payments and local currency use within BRICS, but the near-term reality is a pluralization of payments, not a dramatic upset or a complete replacement of the reserve currency. But financial dominance is only half the story. If we switch gears to physical bottlenecks, the picture flips entirely. China accounts for a staggering 94% of global permanent magnet production. That represents a genuine physical downstream veto point across defense, energy, automotive, and AI supply chains. This market isn't just about digging raw materials out of the dirt. It's heavily concentrated in highly technical refining and manufacturing processes, which grants immense export control leverage. And this physical supply chain dominance directly impacts how we measure modern military power. As we've seen in conflicts like the war in Ukraine, raw aggregate spending just isn't everything when rapid technological adaptation is required on the battlefield. Adaptation speed, drone integration, munition throughput, and industrial repair capacity, those physical supply chains we just talked about, often matter far more than the headline budgets alone. Even knowing that, we still can't ignore the sheer scale of great power investment. With the United States nearing $1 trillion in 2025 at $954 billion, and China and Russia investing heavily at $336 billion and $190 billion respectively, these numbers highlight the massive capital fueling this hardened geoeconomic competition. This is the financial engine driving the scramble for those physical choke points. For our fourth domain, we're looking beyond a simple ceasefire to analyze the potential strategic trajectories of a post-war Russia. The analysis here proposes an objective warning framework known as the spoiler state typology. This is a scenario where returning veterans who are facing fiscal stress and poor reintegration end up being channeled into off-budget entities to form a powerful patronage machine. Think of it less as a traditional government and more like an armed commercial syndicate. It draws a really strong structural analogy to Iran's post-war integration of the IRGC into their political economy. It's a critical framework that forces us to track veteran networks, asset seizures, and alternative banking. We do need a reality check on the scale, though. The assumption of 1.5 million veterans suddenly flooding back into civilian life is basically a scenario ceiling based on active military figures. The reality on the ground as of early 2026 points to roughly 250,000 documented unemployed returnees, so we aren't looking at a massive unmanageable wave. The immediate threat stems from a smaller but deeply networked cohort. But make no mistake, even this smaller number, if they're armed, networked, and given privileged access to commercial vehicles, can matter greatly in a personalized authoritarian system. Okay, part 5. We've mapped out these narrowing governance windows. Now, let's look at the actual implementation plan recommended by the experts. These 5 distinct steps shift our posture from just passively observing these threats to actively mitigating them. First off, post-quantum migration isn't a distant IT problem. Treat it as an immediate budget and inventory exercise. Second, for AI, we have to contest standards with implementable security text, not just broad political complaints. Third, operational resilience means stockpiling rare earth magnets, not just the raw minerals. Fourth, tracking veteran employment in Russia is a critical strategic indicator. And finally, we absolutely must abandon static PDFs in favor of living, auditable dashboards. By following this aggressive 3-month deployment, organizations can build a strategic warning cell, a living intelligence platform that reacts before hard deadlines actually pass. Month 1 is all about building the map and indicator frameworks. Month 2 shifts to publishing those living briefs with clearly named owners so there is actual accountability. And Month 3 is where it gets fully operational, converting those briefs into a decision calendar with set thresholds, red team tests, and immediate actions. This is how you outpace a closing window. I want to leave you with this final thought to really consider. Identifying a threat is only step 1. If your quantum migration or your AI security posture is isolated to policy documents and lab demos, then your risk is only being narrated. It is not being reduced. So what action will you take today to actually reduce your operational risk? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.